Resilience is reparative and restorative experiences. Resiliency is about being two-handed. It's about understanding our pain and understanding our gain, what that pain has taught us. Which is why trauma is important on another level for people to understand what have they learned from it, how have they shaped their lives, because that's part of who they are. That's part of their story, part of who they are. Resiliency is built through shaping stressors so that they are predictable, controllable, or escapable. Do any of you work with kids who do live in hostile environments? Teaching kids what is going to be predictable, that they're going to be going through, what they need to escape from, non-negotiable, this goes down, you get out, you get under your bed, controllable, these are the options you have. That actually, no matter how awful it is, enhances resiliency because it's something the child has some efficacy about, has some power about. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
You mentioned like this when you're trying to teach resiliency. You have a child who's experienced a great deal of trauma, maybe DOA or something.
Yes.
A typical response I get when I go through these things is there's nothing in control. There's just like lack of hope and lack of feeling like there's anything in control. So how would you be able to incorporate?
Okay, the child or adult may feel there's nothing they can control outside, so what can they control inside? Can they control their breathing? Can they control where they are in the room? Can they control themselves? And what we know for those of you who are involved in recovery, in programs like Al-Anon, there is something called the 3 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. So that's from an Al-Anon perspective. And then there is the Serenity Prayer with Al-Anon, which I know you've all heard. And the Serenity Prayer was written by a German philosopher, by the way. And that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the punchline is, and the wisdom to know the difference, because it ain't so clear. So I sometimes, even with people who are not dealing with addiction, and always with the kids, I would deal with the Serenity Prayer, and they thought it was kind of funny, but they thought it was also, I was putting some knowledge on them. So, resiliency is nurtured through a responsive caregiver who's available and able to support the adolescent to understand and respond in a resilient manner. Resiliency can enhance biological integrity. We can rewire the brain when we begin to develop a feeling that we have a capacity to deal with things. Even if the only thing we're dealing with is ourselves, but ultimately that's the most important. That's the only thing we have control over, is ourselves. Stress-based engagement is about meeting adolescents where they want to be and not necessarily where they are. 5 minutes, okay. We're going to skip this preferred view, but it's in your handout. What will motivate change? This is really what we're talking about. There are handouts that were in your shopping bag. You got a shopping bag, and my handouts are in there. Yeah. So you have that, and that whole preferred view engagement is in there. That's the work of Erin and Lund. They have working on a new book. Tom Lund told me that they're writing acknowledgments in their new book, and they are acknowledging me for expanding their work to see how it works with adolescents. So I was very happy with that, because this is a whole way of engaging adolescents about where they want to be, not where they are. Because by the time any adolescent gets to us, are they where they want to be? No. But they know who they are. So if we speak to who they are, and we don't speak to how they've been acting, we have a shot about getting through. If there's time at the end, I'll see how quickly I can go through. I'll give you one story of that. the 12 principles of healing. And this is from the book. What I did is I took, in the book, I looked at what a lot of people said about trauma, including me, but it's not just my thoughts. There are a lot of research in this book. And I boiled it down to 12 principles of healing. Like, if you boil all this stuff down, what does it say you should do? And the first thing is that healing takes time. That may be an obvious one, but so many times kids get to a point, adults get to a point, and all they want to do is they want to get through, and we have to slow them down, because otherwise we're re-traumatizing them by rushing through stuff that cannot be rushed through. So trauma work takes time. It took time to get here, it's going to take time to leave here, but the thing is, you can't leave here. Healing is not linear. We tend to think that this is a cognitive behavioral exercise. Healing's not linear. Have any of you ever really badly scraped your knee? I mean, I have scars from my childhood still on my knees. If you think about how your knee heals, it does not heal in perfect circles. You know, one part heals and another part heals and it kind of heals. It's not linear. So allow the healing to be multi-leveled and not in a straight line. The mind and the body act as one. What we do and what we think affect each other. Sometimes, are many of you mental health people? Yeah. Mental health people, we tend to focus on how people think. We need to also focus on what they do. Because how we act, how we treat ourselves has a big impact on what we think about ourselves and what we think we're worth. So the body and the mind act as one, and both are important in healing. Reparative, restorative, self-soothing experiences are key. We need to learn to do things differently to help ourselves. And we just talked about several very small, concrete things that if you started doing, I promise you, will give you a different quality of life. As simple as that 3 minutes is. Changing our actions changes our thinking. I have so many people who come in and say, well, why do I do that? And I frequently will say, that's not important. How about we just get you to change? And then why you're doing it is going to come up. But we don't have to spend the 10 sessions your insurance company is giving us to figure out the why. Let's get into some changes. And then we'll begin to manage the why. Some of us grew up with the expression, fake it till you make it. This is this in healing. Allow rather than force. My greatest teachers have been the kids and the adults I've worked with, because whenever I think it should go one way and they think it should go another way, and they pursue what they think, they're inevitably right. So allow rather than force. See what feels right. Who's the expert in the adolescent's life that you're working with? The adolescent is the expert. So they need to figure out how to allow rather than we need to figure out how to force. The adolescents I've worked with and the failures I've had have taught me that. We need to own the power of nonverbal communications. We started communicating first, and we will end our lives, most of us, communicating mostly and most loudly nonverbally. Our nonverbal is probably more important than our verbal. With adolescents, it's actually easier than with adults because we can maybe get them to engage more nonverbally. One of the things I didn't have down here, but is sports. The power of sports in teaching nonverbal communication and conflict resolution, adventure-based counseling. All of that is very powerful, and it's largely nonverbal. We need to slow time. The techniques I taught you are about slowing time. When we find the 3 red things in the environment just at the point they've been triggered, we're slowing time. We're taking it down. What happens when people are triggered, which is an immediate thing that happens with trauma, is that time gets very fast. Things are happening very quickly. How do we bring it down? How do we bring ourselves down? Any of you listen to WAMC on NPR in the morning? Some of you do, yeah. And you know, during their fund drive, Alan Chartog, and he has a matching pledge of $5,000, and it's good to 9 o'clock, except he doesn't quite have all the money in, so he slows time. And he goes through this very elaborate thing of slowing time and talking more slowly and how hard it is. And that's kind of how it feels to slow time. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to just grab it and slow it. Now I'll get you to all listen to, I think the next fund drive is June fund drive. Yeah, they just finished one. I think the next one, it seems like they're always going on. But it's very important to slow time. Ways you can practice this in your own life, and some of you are going to groan, but how many of you are going to drive when you leave here? Okay. Drive 3 miles under the speed limit. Yeah, I know, it feels awful. Especially everyone else is going faster, but that's what the right lane is for. But it's you taking control. When I am the most stressed, and believe it or not, I get very stressed, I will get in that right lane, I will slow down, and I realize I am exerting control over my environment. And you know what? It feels good. Everybody else off. You know what? I am not responsible for them. I got to take care of me. I spent enough years taking care of them, and guess what? They didn't notice. So, But it's a simple way of taking care of slowing down time. You can walk slower, you can talk slower, you can drive slower. Sometimes we need a pharmacological assist. Sometimes medication is important. And I tell people if they have been perfecting trying to relax through all these drugs and all this drinking, maybe they want to try a little Abilify. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes. And it needs to be prescribed, by the way, by someone who, my biases is a real expert in this category of medication. So. And the last one is don't take it personally. As soon as we begin to change, out of time. It's called OT. Okay. As soon as we begin to change, people say, what's up with you? That's about them. All those people honking because we're driving the speed limit. I'm not going to take it personally. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to take